you don't want to give your improvement teams a very broad goal, like reduce production cost. But you do want their efforts to have a serious impact on what the factory is doing in the end. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we talk about continuous improvement in an industrial setting. In this video, it is about those goals that you set for teams. See, setting broad goals is not giving your teams a good start. If you can give your team a narrower goal right from the beginning, basically even before the team started, you are giving them such a great head start, because an improvement team, they should be focused on one single event, one single thing happening in or around your processes. But then, of course, if they do improve clutch 55's breakdown and prevent it from ever happening again, did that really impact your factory or not? See, in the end, we are, of course, running those improvement teams, spending all of those resources to improve company performance. So how do you balance that out? That is the topic of this video. And this concept that we'll be discussing is what we call closing the loop. So we get to our team goal, but then we also close it back into the overarching company performance indicators. What do I mean? See, you have this concept of key management indicators, key performance indicators. It will come down also into key action indicators, but that is basically the main stuff that the company is focused on. This is generally, money and volume and market share and those things. Then you've got your performance indicators. And when we're talking only manufacturing side of things, these are, for instance, things like the OEE of your lines, right? OEE has a very direct link with volume or output, but volume and output, they are also determined by the market and all kinds of things around it. OEE is an operational KPI that gives you what can my machine do, how much output could we generate, how much can we improve it, labor cost, defect rates, things like that, right? Those are your general factory management performance KPIs. They are the operational side of what makes the numbers go green or red. But when we are launching a team, this is still too broad. See, you want to give a team very clear, narrow direction. So you go to a loss on such a KPI, and then even better, if you cannot do this before the team starts, it'll be sort of step 1 or 2 of the team. You need to find a loss mode. Now, when we are talking about, for instance, material usage, the loss might be waste due to scrap, and then one of those loss modes is, let's say we scrap plates of steel. That is a loss. We scrap a whole plate of steel, and we do that unfortunately quite often, but then we check loss modes. So we have a couple of reasons why we scrap it. Edges are all wobbly, it's one loss mode. There is a recurring dent on the left side, it's another loss mode. All of those reasons result in the loss plate being scrapped, and that results in poor performance on our material usage KPI. And maybe even our OEE if it gets really out of hand, but you get the picture. So we set up a team to attack such a loss mode. So our teams, they get a pretty narrow goal. And this is by design. This is what you want, because you don't want your teams trying to improve all kinds of standards everywhere. The ideal outcome, if we are talking more of a problem-solving team, then we even expect that there is a single root cause to our trouble. Right? This is if you already know that you can achieve on your KPIs and your losses and loss modes, and suddenly something pops up. Right? For instance, with these plates, we basically never really had this recurring pattern on the left side of the plate, and suddenly it pops up. Right? Maybe we got it once a year before, and now we get it a couple of times a day. So we are really out of our expected performance. Then we expect that something has happened just before we started seeing these defects. A single cause, in fact, probably with a single root cause. Problem-solving team, if you, by the way, want to have a good way of solving such problems, check out my problem-solving template and the whole course I have built around that. Really nice stuff. But We'll not go into that in this video. Or if you know that every week we get a couple of those plates with a repeating left pattern, it's already been happening for months, years maybe, we would like to tackle it. Now, probably this is definitely an improvement project. You are improving your current standard, and it'll probably take a bit longer. But you still want to have the team focus on this problem. So in that first case, right, in that real problem, so deviation from standard, it's clear why they should be focusing on that single problem. But also in the improvement team, you would like them to focus on this area, because you don't need teams running around still saying, you know, that left repeating pattern on our steel plates, it is a problem, but we can also fix the temperature of the kiln, and that'll reduce our gas usage. It's nice, but come on guys, we didn't put you together for nothing. This is the improvement we want to do now. There's some other experts looking at the kiln, right? You make these management decisions. So you give a team a narrow goal. But then you do need that to come back, right? If they have achieved that narrow goal, what's the effect on the KPI? So what you want to see happen is an improvement in that KPI, right? You want your KPI to go from somewhere here to, hey, we did that team, and now we're balancing on a higher level. They, of course, have attacked this loss mode, and they have hopefully fully eradicated it or reduced it by 80%. Now your waste KPI is not going to improve by 80%, or your OEE is not going to go up by 10 or 20% usually from a single project. That is because this is just a small part of this loss, which is a small part of that KPI. But it should have an effect. And what you very often see is, especially with OEE, but also even with this waste type of stuff, you fix it here, but then it pops up somewhere else. Right? So it could be that with this steel plate, we remove those plates that have the indentation, but then they get scrapped later on. Not very likely, but when we do this with OEE, we, for instance, we take out all kinds of breakdowns on, let's say, station 2 in the line. Because of that, the product flows through the first part of the line much quicker. But now at station 5, actually sort of hidden in there was that they were performing slightly better than station 2, but not by a whole lot. So now that the whole upstream flow is really coming, 5 is a serious bottleneck. If you had seen this in your analysis at the beginning, and hopefully we do, but it's really not always the case, you will tell that team with their narrow goal of removing 80% of a specific breakdown, you will not increase your OEE by 5%. It's only sort of the OEE of that station will be increased by 5 or maybe more percent, but we know that the next bottleneck will cap it at 3. So we expect the team to deliver about 3% of the KPI. But then we do need to check it, right? And that is because we have a plan in place. We know that last year we got a specific standard, so to say, of performance. And we would like to reach a higher level of performance. And this here team, they actually helped us to get a bit higher. But in our planning, in our improvement roadmap or a year plan, don't make very long improvement roadmaps, but at least in a year plan or something like that, we plan a number of teams. With this OEE team, we might also plan something to work on station 5 afterwards, if we already know that this is going to be the next bottleneck. In the case of scrap, we may have done a Pareto and discovered, 3 sources, 3 losses, defect types that we really want to attack, because those 3 together will really make a big impact. So we define 3 projects. And they get those narrow goals, but the narrow goal also has to affect the KPI. And so we're going to follow each of those projects and see if they actually get that performance level up, because this in the end is what we do our continuous improvement for. So when we discuss that a team needs a narrow goal because it is much better to focus on one problem, also because you do want to celebrate the successes of a team, so even if the rest of the line goes to waste, but they really fixed their part and they did it brilliantly and they put the standards in place and did everything that they needed to do, and it's not their fault that the rest went to waste, congratulate them on a great result, because without their efforts it would have been even worse. But do keep in mind the KPI. Now, when I guide teams through these improvement projects, I always tell them, please follow your own narrow goal KPI. That's the thing you want to follow week by week. But also track that KPI that your team is affecting. Because you do want to know if you can see the impact in what the factory is seeing. Right? So basically, I advise teams to always track the both KPIs, the actual plant KPI and the team performance indicator. And that is something that will motivate the teams, keep it much easier to also check how they are doing, but also make sure that as an organization, your teams are delivering the results in the end for the whole organization. Because unfortunately, I've also seen improvement programs where the teams reported savings of millions a year, and then next year's budget, the plant was doing way worse. So we had savings of 2 million and the plant actually was doing 1 million less. What? What is happening? This was a plant that did not close the loop, and actually in their case, one of the main things that they didn't do is the new standards were not controlled tightly enough, but also many of those narrow savings, they ran into a next bottleneck. So this type of planning and closing that project loop and seeing that you reach your KPI goal that then translate in your management goals, that is very important for the CI department, for the plant management team. Use it, because otherwise you will have a non-functioning continuous improvement, performance excellent activity in your plant. If you cannot close this loop, most of the effort you are expending for nothing. Now, I said I would be returning a little bit to the key action indicators as well, and let me just do that. When the team reaches their narrow goal, they made all kinds of improvements. So they put standards into place. Those standards most likely will have things like, we need to keep the temperature on this setting. We need to always be feeding at a certain speed. All kinds of working standards, material standards, machine standards, how often do we need to inspect a line. All of those standards are controlled in some way. Those are the actions. The key action indicators, that's sort of a bonus on the close the loop. They are those actions that ensure that you maintain the standards, that will keep your losses in check, that will maintain your performance. When all of your lines are performing, you will reach your management indicator goals. This also means that when you are dropping off, the first thing you're going to do is check if you are doing all of those actions that ensure the standards. Right? Before you set up a whole problem-solving team, first you check if the standards are being followed. All part of how we close the loop of improvement, getting the gains, keeping the gains. Now, I hope that that gave you a good understanding of why we need to be tracking all of those levels. But also, if you see that your company is not doing this closing of the loops, it doesn't close that gap between where we are now, where do we want to be on KPIs, maybe even on management indicators, by planning the teams in there, you are just wishful thinking your budget. Right? So if you see that your company is not doing that, think about how you can implement such things, how you can visualize it, discuss it with your management team. How are we going to make sure that all the efforts we put in place will get us to the budget goals, the vision goals, get us profitable? If you did like that, don't forget to hit that like button, and also drop me a comment below if you want me to discuss any other CI, operational excellence topic. I love making videos of your suggestions. For now, I wish you the best of luck tracking your team's results, and as always, don't forget to also enjoy the continuous improvement journey.